Hello and welcome back to another Monster Hunter World video. Today I'm going to be going over the etiquette of Monster Hunter World. Now this is something I've been wanting to do for a while, however I'm not too sure how well this will be received, quite simply because there's a lot of veteran players of the series or the franchise that are a little bit stuck in their ways and they're not too pleased, shall we put, with a lot of the newer gamer series or the newer gamer types coming through. There's a lot of Fortnite happening in Monster Hunter World with the noobs and the get goods, and it's a little bit off-putting at first, particularly in some public sessions, because people just don't have the same ideals as they did back when Monster Hunter first came about, when I was a bit younger. So I'm going to move on to the first etiquette, as I would put it, and that quite simply is the box. Now the box is actually quite a simple one, although it also does quite baffle me, particularly in Monster Hunter World, because you can put an SOS flare, which basically means I need help, or in the case of I do it is I just put a flare up because I enjoy playing with other people and meeting new and wondrous people. But if it is a case of I need help, which I have often come across with people, they put a flare up, I've entered the mission, they're like, oh thank god you're here, we're really struggling. I go to the box and there's no first aid meds, there's no rations. Typically I always eat, and I do always go in with full loadout, such as my potions, mega potions, max potions, ancient potions, the lot. But if you're asking for help and then you take all of the first aid and the rations, some people even actually take the ammo as well, you never know, you might have a gunner. It might be a gunner that's just starting out and is unable to make their own ammo yet because they don't have the resources, but there's a blade master walking around with 2,000 rounds in his pocket because he thinks they'll make a nice sell later on. So for me, I would say that the etiquette would be simply take your own share. That's one stack of potions, one stack of rations. Sometimes you get things like cool drinks as well, just take one stack. Although this can get a little bit more iffy when it comes to capture missions, particularly in the low ranks, because there will be an easy shock trap with some easy trank bombs. If you're comfortable with it, take them. If you're not, let someone else try. You can always call them a scrub later on for screwing up. I'm joking, don't call them a scrub. Another reason I would personally say that it's good or polite to leave others' resources in the box is because someone might be brand new, they've never played Monster Hunter before, they haven't got their own potions. Yes, I'm aware that we now have a tent where you can actually pick up more items and constantly resupply. However, some people might not have actually been able to craft more things yet, they haven't quite figured the game out. Perhaps they only really like to use their own potions during an absolute dire emergency, and they always will go through their first aids or rations first. However, on the flip side, if you are a more experienced player and you are helping out a friend who's a lot lower level, or perhaps you just don't need them and you're quite happy to rely on your own resources, of course you can leave those behind and just let the others know that you've left them behind so that they can have spare resources. Perhaps there's someone that's a little bit less familiar with the game and feels that having an extra 4 first aids will come in absolute handy. Now I would like to say, as a bit more of a personal note for me, that a lot of the time when I've gone into these missions and there is a nice healthy stack of them missing, for me it does sort of show what sort of character you have in the game, and I wouldn't really put you on my most trusted people list. Anyway, on to the second etiquette: to kill or to capture. Now I actually don't really want to go too in depth with this one because there seems to be a lot of people that have different ideas of this, and it basically boils down to killing or capturing gives better or more rewards. This is actually completely false. It never has and it never will. Just different items drop under different circumstances, and to be perfectly honest, this really on that point is a subject for a different video. What I really want to talk about is on the to kill or capture is I've had several times where I've been in a group of people and I really want to get the towel. I'm trying to get the towel and I've said that I am trying to get the towel, but the monster limps off without its towel being cut, and before I know it, someone has put a trap down and caught it. Now there is a distinct possibility of me getting a towel in the rewards regardless at the end, but on this particular occasion I didn't. Now I can tell you that if I'd cut the towel and carved it and then maybe we caught it, the chances are I probably would have gotten a towel, but I didn't get a towel because someone caught it, despite me saying I want to get the tail. Now generally speaking, I actually don't really care whether it's a kill or capture, but if I'm after the tail, I would prefer to get the tail. If I'm after the claws, I would prefer to get the claws, and then what happens after, I'm not really too fussed. So I would say, particularly if it is your mission and you're the one that put the quest up and others have joined you, just convey what your intentions are, whether you want to kill it, whether you want to capture it, and if you are wanting to capture it, make sure you're the one with the traps. Don't say, I'd like to capture it. Who's got traps? You're a dick. So if you are wanting to capture it, have your traps, have your trank bombs, but do make sure you convey that message. If you're wanting to kill it, hopefully others will be on board with that, and that is on the other side of the etiquette. If someone is saying to you that they would like to kill it, kill it. Don't be a fanny, don't be that little prick, and go and capture it when it's walking off. It's not really a big deal. We're all there to capture or kill a monster at the end of the day, and we're all here for the grind. Just be polite about it and make sure you're conveying what your intentions are to the rest of your group. Number 3 is Lifepowder. Now I've actually spoken to a lot of people who are new to the game and they don't know what Lifepowder actually does. So this is going to be a quick little tutorial on Lifepowder. Now Lifepowder is bloody useful for 2 things. You are able to heal yourself rather quickly. Rather than having to walk around glugging a potion, you can give yourself a pretty substantial bit of health just by using a Lifepowder. It's not the most amount of health, it's not going to be a perfect heal where now you are suddenly back to full health. It is just a quick click of the button. You basically do a powder throw, which is a really pretty quick animation, but on top of this, if there is an ally within a certain area around you, it's a pretty hefty area as well, I might say, it also heals them. So not only is this useful for keeping you alive, it is also pretty darn handy for keeping allies alive. This is something that I'm really wishing more people to use. There have been several times where I have made a very small mistake, got myself pinned into a corner with a monster on top of me going absolutely mental, and all it would take would be one person to use one Lifepowder and everything would be a-okay and we could crack on with the game. But instead we end up being a continue down, things then go awry from there, and next thing you know we have failed the quest. Accidents happen. On the flip side to that, I have also had missions quite recently, in fact the day before the recording of this video and the showing of this video, I was doing a Xenia Jiva with a group of randoms, and there was a guy with a lance who was not any way, shape or form meant to be there. He stood in all the fire procs, he stood in the way of the lasers. At one point he literally walked into the laser. He died or fainted, got carted all 3 times, and eventually caused us to fail the quest when 3 different people had put their vouchers in for extra money, because we'd been farming him all day. This guy was a complete random, came in and just felt the need to near enough suicide his way through a mission. Like hell would I condone anyone using a Lifepowder on this person. So to make sure that you are gauging whether the people are worth the Lifepowder, I would generally always try and use a life powder because it's a nice polite thing to do, but it does come with a pretty hefty resource cost, simply because they use god bugs. These are pretty horrible to try and farm, both using your actual farms, that tree, if you've come across that yet, or actually running around in the air and trying to find them. They are classed as a rare bug, so they're not always present and you don't exactly get them in large quantities. So it is entirely up to you. Sometimes people just aren't deserving of it, other times you've been farming like hell to try and kill a select monster, you're on your final continue and it's so nearly dead. Maybe just using those life powders would help push your team along to actually finally complete the mission you have been stuck on. Life powders are a handy way to keep your friends and allies alive, and it's just generally a rather nice thing to do. For the next etiquette, I have positioning. Now for me this is actually a really big one, and it's also one of the hardest ones to get around because it does actually require a lot of communication within the game, and it's in previous games, particularly on the PSP or Nintendo DS, it's been near enough a nightmare or damn near impossible to actually do unless you've got a select group of friends and you're all on like a TeamSpeak or a Discord together while playing. However, in Monster Hunter World we now have a chat, but an actual voice chat, so you don't need to be part of a Discord to do this. You are quite easily capable of communicating within your group, whether it be some friends, some family, or just a complete group of randoms. And what I actually mean by positioning is simply watching your arcs, looking where you are in relation to 1, the monster, 2, the other 3 hunters in your group. Why? Because you can hit each other. This doesn't do damage, but it can stun, knock back, give you a flying lesson, interrupt, and can in some cases get you killed, because if you're mid dodge and ally hits you by accident, it can stop you from dodging, so you take the full force of an Anjanath's lovely steamroll breath thing that sounds like a train. And particularly at low levels when you're just getting into the game, this will be a one shot. So you really do need to watch your arcs. Now the main weapons, despite me actually using one of these as well, that you really do need to look out for, and if you're using these weapons, be mindful of where you are in relation to other players, that is the dual blades, the longsword and the insect glaive. The dual blades, although they don't have the greatest amount of reach, they can near enough stun lock allies due to the speed and ferocity in how they can hit. They do pair very well with some of the gunners, such as the light bowgun and heavy bowgun. Don't really come across too many bows at the moment. They tend to be playing more along the lines of a solo player, but dual blades are a nightmare, particularly if you are in front of one trying to get somewhere. Longswords are generally hell because they have such a large reach, and when they start using their control attack, I don't know what the button would be on a gamepad or a controller, but basically it's those big arcing swings. This can interrupt people all over a monster that is roughly the size of a Baroth. So you really do need to sort of pay attention as to where you are as a longsword user, or if there's a longsword user in your team, pay attention to where he is and what he is doing. The third weapon that I mentioned was the insect glaive. Now for me, this can be one of the best ones or one of the most horrible ones in terms of stun locked, simply because it doesn't really do a lot of arcing, and the sweeps or the combos don't really tend to last that long, although there is a combo that you can make last as long as you actually want if you do the correct buttons in the correct sequence. But then on the flip side as well, he can, as an insect glaive, pretty much stun lock you permanently, because the insect glaive also does have a combo lock, which can be really annoying. Now, there are other weapons which you also should be staying clear of, and that is the greatsword, the switch axe and the hammer, simply because these can send you on a flying lesson, and if you are using one of these, I'd recommend staying a little bit clear from perhaps some of the other players. Now, moving on to something a little bit more iffy, although keeping with the positioning, it is generally a good idea to recognise what weapons other players are using and where they're best suited. For example, if you are after something's fangs, for example, or horns, especially around the head area, and you've got dual blades, you've knocked the monster down, you go to run to the head and there's a guy there with a hammer, that means you shouldn't really go near the head. That means you should turn around and go towards the tail or the wings or the back. That guy with a hammer will outdo you in every way, shape or form on damage on that monster's head. Simple as. He has a hammer. He will break that head very easily. Well done for knocking it down, but it's now hammer time. He will outdo you. Go for the tail. He does blunt damage. Blunt damage versus the head has like an 80% increase in damage. Your blades will barely do about a 30% increase in damage. He is the better one for the job. You need to recognise that. That is also the same for the hammer. Don't go attacking the tail. You're not going to cut it. Although I have seen hammers cut the tail, which is a bit bizarre. You're better off going for the head. A quick note on hunting horns, because my wife plays a hunting horn and there's a lot of people that don't really seem to understand this at the moment. If you see a person with a hunting horn run away from a monster and then just start mindlessly swinging in the corner, leave them to it. They are preparing their buffs. I've seen it a few times now with my wife, players walking up to her, shooting her in the back or stabbing her or just running around in a circle and then complaining when she hits them. She has moved away for a very specific reason. She is doing her buffs so that she can heal you, increase your attack, give you resistances, give you defenses. She's doing what hunting horns do. Leave the hunting horns to it. Then moving on to gunners, and this really is actually quite a small one. With gunners, you need to really watch your positioning so that you don't shoot other people, especially with ammunition such as slicing and sticky. Another odd one would be the Wyvern Blast as well. This is a very powerful type of ammunition. However, don't do it up someone else's arse. You're just going to send them for a flying lesson. Be mindful of where you are and be mindful of what other people are doing. My fifth point is something that has actually been annoying me for a while, and that is the parts. Everyone wants different things. Everyone wants the horns or the tail or the wings or something. There's 4 of you. Typically all 4 of you would have different weapons as well. Work as a team. If you've got someone with a greatsword and they're like, yo, I need to get the horns, and you're there with a hammer and you're like, I need to get the tail. Well, you might need the tail, but you've got a hammer, so you ain't getting the tail. Go for the horns. And that guy that wants the horns but has got a greatsword, he can get the tail. Work as a team. Work it out. I've had it several times now and I've been like, guys, can we cut the tail? And they've been like, no, screw you, I want the horns. And it's like, well, I'm able to get the horns because I sometimes play as a heavy bowgun, and on these occasions I was playing as a heavy bowgun. It works. I can get the horns. It's not too difficult for a heavy bowgun to get these sorts of things. So you need to cooperate. Come to a plan. Come to a way in which you are able to formulate a plan of, I can get the horns if you guys can damage the tail for me and then cut the tail off. That's not a problem. You know, we're all here to grind. We're all here to have a good time. But as well as going back to positioning, make sure that if you do formulate a plan, you're not getting in the way of each other. Now, this is my final point, and I've simply called it hunters. And what I'm meaning by that is, We're all playing Monster Hunter. We've all got this game for one reason or another. I've got this game because I've played Monster Hunter since the very first release on PlayStation 2. I think the only game I actually missed that was in the Western releases was Monster Hunter Tribe because it was on Nintendo Wii, and I didn't want to buy an entire console just to play one game. So we've all got Monster Hunter for a reason. We all like the game. Others are a little bit more fanatic about it than some, but we like the game, so let's just get along. There have been so many times where I've seen people start abusing others in the chat because they got carted or something went wrong, they didn't get the tail or whatever. It's a grind game, things will go wrong, you can always do it again. It's not like previous games where if you fail a quest you lose a shit ton of money. You literally lose nothing from failing, unless you're a gunner, you lose a few bullets, but they're easily to grind back up and you can make them or buy them. It's not really a big deal, just get along. We're all here to stab a Rathalos in the face. It's not really a big deal, just try and keep things polite, convey your intentions, be nice to each other, stop with the scrubs and the noobs. It's not Fortnite, it's not Call of Duty. I'm pretty sure from what I have seen the majority of people playing Monster Hunter are at least mature enough to realise that the game is just there for fun. It is a challenging game, but it's also a really fun game and it can keep you occupied for absolutely hours. Anyway, I'm going to stop this video now and stop moaning about how I feel about certain things. I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I do hope it's hopefully conveyed a few messages that I feel the community might not be as well in tune with. Would like to say that this is basically all my own personal thoughts and feelings. I know of a few others that think the same, but that's really it. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'll see you guys pretty darn soon. Ta-ra!